I thought I had it all with Serena, my beautiful fiancée, until the late nights and flimsy excuses led me to hire a private investigator. The truth was a shock, but her reaction was worse. When I confronted her, she just laughed and said, "You'll never find anyone like me. You've always been out of my league." A year later, at a high school reunion, I re-met Veronica, an international model. Her friends' words, "She always had a crush on you," changed everything. This story is the perfect comeback. A romantic love story in Paris, with the woman my ex would call out of my league. I've never told this story to many people, mainly because it's long and it was a brutal experience at the time. It all happened about 2 years ago. I'm Ethan, 33. I met Serena, also known as Qley, 30, on a serious dating app. We clicked instantly. We understood each other, shared the same humor and interests, and could talk for hours without getting bored. It was new and thrilling. To be honest, I was a little nervous asking her out because she was so stunning. She was breathtaking. I thought I was a decent guy. But Serena was clearly on another level. I remember thinking maybe I shouldn't be chasing something serious with someone like her. Girls like that usually have lots of options. Dating someone that attractive is its own odd problem, but it came with its own challenges. We dated and had an amazing time, which confirmed everything I'd felt during our online chats. Things became official pretty fast. Still, one small thing nagged at me: the attention Serena got from other men. She'd tell me about it sometimes. Even when we went out together, some guy would blatantly flirt with her, or she'd get messages from guys on social media. At first I didn't worry. I trusted her. I felt she didn't care about anyone but me. I was simply enjoying being with her and didn't want to be the jealous, insecure boyfriend. Everything was going great, except for one small detail that kept lingering in my mind. One night we had a random late conversation, and the idea of a hall pass came up. You know the joke. You and your partner agree on a celebrity you could sleep with no questions asked. She brought it up, which struck me as odd because I'm usually the one who starts those dumb conversations. Serena said her hall pass was some famous actor, which made sense on the surface. But then she said something that really stuck with me. "I don't think many famous people would turn me down," she said with a sly smile, like she was totally serious. I knew she was gorgeous. I'd always known that. But hearing her say it that way made me uncomfortable. She seemed to assume she could have any man she wanted, and that made me uneasy. It didn't seem like her. Despite her looks, she'd always been pretty down to earth. That comment felt arrogant. I didn't say anything then, just laughed it off and moved on, but it haunted me. The discomfort faded after a few days, and things returned to normal, but I never forgot it. After the hall pass chat, things went well for a while, but then I started to notice changes in her behavior. At first it was subtle, but over time it became obvious. She started coming home later than she used to. She used to be home by around 6 after work, but she began coming in at 7, sometimes 7:30, sometimes even later. And what were her excuses? Mostly flimsy. She'd say things like, "Oh, I lost track of time," or "I ran into a friend and we talked for a bit." It was odd because she used to be very detailed about her workday. If she stayed late for work, she'd tell me exactly what project she was on and who she spoke to. Now it was vague, meaningless reasons. On top of that, she got pretty snappy if I asked why she was late. She'd snap at me, accuse me of being controlling or not trusting her. I'm not confrontational, especially if someone's in a bad mood, so I usually backed off. But the late nights continued along with those hazy excuses. My suspicion deepened. There was this small voice in my head saying, "Something isn't right." I tried to ignore it, but it got harder and harder. Eventually, I asked her plainly if something was wrong. I said, "Are you okay? You've been acting different lately." Of course, she denied it. She said, "No, everything's fine. I'm just stressed with work, like usual." I wanted to believe her, I really did. Days passed and the behavior persisted. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I was worried and that her behavior seemed off. This time she seemed to understand and actually apologized, saying it was all stress and exhaustion and that it wasn't personal. I accepted what she said, but I couldn't fully believe it. After that conversation, things seemed better, at least on the surface. She was more open, talked more. When she got home late, she'd tell me a story about what happened, but the stories felt hollow. There was something about the way she told them, a lack of detail and avoidance of eye contact that felt wrong. I remember one specific night. She came home late and told me she ran into an old co-worker and went out for a drink. I knew she was lying. It was like a light went out in my head. I can't explain it, but I got this overwhelming sense that she was hiding something. Something important. That's when the thought struck me. She's cheating. I couldn't let it slide. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I needed to find out the truth by any means. Her behavior had changed so much from the woman I met. I couldn't ignore it. This wasn't the person I fell for. Something was clearly wrong, and I was determined to find out what. My first idea was to check her phone. That's where all the evidence is, right? Messages, emails, social media, everything. But I quickly realized that wouldn't be effective. First, she always kept her phone with her, so getting it long enough to search was impossible. Even if I did get access, I'm not a tech guy. I wouldn't know where to look or what to look for, and she probably deleted anything that could incriminate her. Besides, I needed proof. I didn't want to find a suspicious text and then confront her. I wanted to catch her in the act, to be absolutely certain, so I went another route. I hired a private investigator. Yes, I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but I was desperate. I needed the truth and someone who knew what they were doing. I wanted to know who this guy was and where they were meeting. I searched for PIs in my area and found one with good reviews. I contacted him and set up a meeting. I remember feeling pretty nervous walking into his office, like I was admitting defeat. I sat down across from a man who'd clearly seen it all, and I told him everything. I told him about the hall pass conversation, the late nights, the ridiculous excuses. He listened calmly, nodded, didn't judge or make me feel foolish. He said he'd seen this 100 times. At first he recommended surveillance for 2 weeks, since her late nights were inconsistent, but that would be expensive. In the end, we agreed on 10 days. I gave him all her contact info, phone number, email, work address. Before I left, he told me not to contact him until the 10 days were up unless it was an emergency. "It's going to be rough," he said. "But you need to let me do my job." I agreed. I knew it would be agonizing, but I had to trust him. Those 10 days were the longest of my life. It was torture knowing that a private investigator was following my fiancée and could uncover proof of my darkest suspicions. I felt powerless, just waiting, imagining, running through every possible scenario. It was impossible to focus on anything else. Work was a nightmare. I couldn't sleep, barely ate, and the worst part? During those 10 days, she kept coming home late. 3 times she came home after 9 p.m., with the same tired, pathetic excuses. Oh, I had last-minute plans with some friends. Traffic was terrible. She had no idea that each excuse only deepened my conviction that she was lying. Finally, the 10th day arrived. The investigator called right on time. He didn't say much over the phone, just that he had the information I needed and asked if we could meet in person. I said yes, absolutely. I needed to hear this face to face. I couldn't bear to learn news like this over a call. I'd waited what felt like forever, and I needed to see his expression to know if it was true. I drove to his office, hands shaking on the steering wheel. My stomach was in knots. When I walked in, he was sitting there with a manila envelope on the desk. He gestured for me to sit down. Then he asked whether I wanted him to explain what he'd found, or if I preferred to look at the evidence myself. I told him I wanted to hear it from him first. He took a deep breath and said, "Your suspicions were correct." He told me he had followed her to an apartment complex 3 times. She went in alone and left about 2 hours later, each time with the same man. He'd gotten the apartment number and the man's name, Derek. Then the investigator slid the envelope across the table. I opened it, and there they were, photos. Serena and Derek in front of the apartment complex, hugging, holding hands, kissing beside her car. Everything was there, undeniable proof. I nearly lost control. It's one thing to suspect something. It's another to see it. Visual evidence hits different. It's a punch straight to the gut. I tried to collect myself. When I got home, I asked Serena to sit down. I didn't yell, didn't cause a scene. I just said quietly, "We need to talk." She knew something was wrong. She sat down and I laid everything out. I told her I knew about the affair, that I'd hired a private investigator, and that I had proof. Her first reaction was shock, Then she tried to stay calm, acting like nothing was wrong. But I didn't stop. I told her everything the investigator had told me, about the apartment, about Derek, all of it. She just sat there in silence. No denial, no apology, not even an excuse. She just listened. The more I talked, the angrier I got. Her silence was infuriating. She seemed completely indifferent, as if she didn't care or feel any guilt for what she'd done. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I was done. I can't do this anymore, I said. I can't play this game. I'm finished. And then she did something I'll never forget, and she laughed. She stood up and launched into a monologue. "You're leaving me," she said. "Really?" So I had a little fun outside the relationship. Big deal. It didn't mean anything. "Yeah, I cheated, so what? You think you'll ever find anyone like me again? Haven't you realized all these years I've been out of your league?" She went on and on, basically trying to make me feel lucky to have been with her, even after she'd cheated. I was stunned. The arrogance was on another level. This wasn't remorse, it was contempt. I'd been hurt and angry before, but this was pure rage. I stood up, looked her straight in the eye, and told her exactly how much I despised her. I don't remember the exact words, but I meant every one of them. Then I walked out. No bag, no goodbye. I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her for another second. I felt completely betrayed. I spent that night in a cheap motel. I just needed to be alone and think about everything that had happened. The next day I went back to the house to grab my things. She was still there, trying to act unfazed. And then she had the nerve to say, "I knew you'd come back," with a smug smile. I didn't respond. I just went inside, gathered my clothes, toiletries, and essentials. I told her, "I'll come back for the rest later." She just stood there, smirking in disbelief. I tried to understand why she acted that way. Maybe she needed constant validation. Maybe she saw me as a safe, reliable guy, someone she could look down on. And maybe that's why she didn't think her affair was a big deal. After I left, she started messaging me. The first texts were mocking and mean, as if she thought this was all a joke. She clearly believed I wouldn't actually leave. But a few days later, when I came back with a friend to move out completely, she looked shocked. She couldn't believe I was serious. I think that was the moment she realized it was really over. One of the last texts she ever sent me said, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." I blocked her after that. The breakup with Serena was chaos, and it took a while to find my footing again. A few months later, I went to my high school reunion. It was a great night, and that's when Veronica walked in. Veronica had been in my class back then, tall, gorgeous, effortlessly graceful. After graduation, she became a successful model. At the reunion, I was chatting with her close friend. When I mentioned Veronica, her friend grinned and said, "She's going to kill me for saying this, but..." "She's always liked you," I laughed. Veronica, a famous model, liked me. It sounded ridiculous, but her friend insisted she still does. "If you're single, you should give it a shot." After everything that happened with Serena, it felt unreal to hear that someone like Veronica might be interested in me. It made Serena's words, "out of your league," seem utterly meaningless. I decided to take the chance. I found Veronica on Instagram and sent her a message. 5 days later, she replied, warmly, excitedly. We started talking, then moved to FaceTime. At the time, Veronica was in Paris for a campaign shoot. During our video calls, I got to know her world. After a few weeks, I asked her, "What are we?" She smiled and said she wanted to be my girlfriend. Long distance wasn't easy, but I was willing to make it work. I booked a flight to Paris to visit her. The trip was incredible. I saw her at work in her element, confident, radiant, and I felt more connected to her than ever. I took tons of photos during her shoot and posted a few on my close friend's Instagram story, completely forgetting that Serena was still on that list. A few hours later, I got a message from Serena. "Who's that?" "Playing fanboy now." I calmly replied, "That's my girlfriend." She sent a snide remark back. That's when I decided to end it once and for all. I texted, "If you thought you were out of my league, Veronica's out of this world. How's your guy doing these days?" She saw it but didn't respond. I blocked her right after. Maybe it was petty, but honestly, she deserved it, and that's where the story ends. I can honestly say I've never been happier. Veronica is a blessing, kind, funny, brilliant, beautiful inside and out. I'm genuinely grateful things didn't work out with Serena. If they had, I never would have met Veronica.